Okay, so I don't know if I want to consider this a vlog or something else, or a discussion video or a rant video, something like that. I don't know. Well, it's just something I've had in my mind, well, for way too long. And with the way the world is currently going, I just really want to talk. You know, the world is completely upside down right now. People attacking people, people dying, people having property destroyed, friendships being torn asunder, the general health and well being of everyone in jeopardy. So, fuck it. I want to talk about depression. And I know it's a thing a lot of YouTubers like to do, whatever. Mostly because we find ourselves depressed fairly, often. Whether it's over um, numbers or whatever. But I've talked about it briefly in different nerdcasts and stuff like that, just talking to different people. And a lot of people ask me how I got into Gundam building, which is, the primary draw of my main channel. And the reality is, I was depressed, like severely depressed. Um, and I needed a creative outlet. I needed something. As a person who grew up as an artist, something I haven't really shown off is my artwork from when I was younger. And somebody who liked to build things, whether that's cars or woodworking projects or anything like that, or a house. Um, I needed some type of outlet. I didn't have one at all. I had video games, I was playing Minecraft, stuff like that. But this was in 2013. I had been fairly well depressed probably since like 2007, maybe 8. Definitely from '09 and up. Um, so to just go back, way back when, back in the early 2000s, post high school, I graduated in 2001. Ton of close friends, working on college. I went to a community college for many years. Getting into the workforce, getting my first quote unquote real job, even though I was delivering pizza for a long, long time. I got to spend all my free time with my friends. We had very close family all the time and everything like that. And then eventually, when I got my real job that I'm still doing now, I finally had real money to work with. Not only that, I was working with my best friend and other people I knew in a fairly good job with lots of money being thrown at me. And I got my first place, like my first apartment, together with one of my other best friends. Actually, my longest running best friend at the time. I guess, period. He's still my longest running best friend. So we get an apartment together. And then with his job and my job, we were on opposite schedules eventually. And we ended up getting on each other's nerves more than anything, and until he eventually left, and really it jeopardized our friendship. But eventually we became friends again. But we fought more often than not over the bills or cleanliness, realistically. And not to mention fighting with our neighbors. Um, so that's how I learned to be a more respectful upstairs neighbor after that. Once again, it was my first place. What do I know? I'm just an idiot. So after that, I was living on my own. Same apartment complex, but one bedroom by myself instead of a two bedroom. Just, mostly affordable at the time. Got myself a new car, which was awesome. My only first car. Correction, my only new car ever. And that was all awesome. Buying all the cool stuff I want, Mind you, I'm going into debt, but I'm making a ton of money, so who cares? Still getting to hang out with all my friends. You know, even my best friends getting married and other ones already having kids. And then me basically being alone. So I was single from 2001 till 2000. I gotta think about the day. 2011, I think. If I do the math right there. Um, I think it was 2011. So basically, like 10 or 11 years post high school, single. You know, taking out the occasional girl, but never dating anyone, never having a real relationship with anyone. On occasion, there were the girls that I referred to as girlfriends without benefits, people that I fully invested in, treated as though it was a relationship, and didn't get anything in return except for mild companionship, which turned into resentment because it wasn't going any further. I've mentioned that before in different video. And on top of that, of just being alone and watch everybody else be happy, basically, when I was by myself, I felt just totally alone. MySpace was brand new. Facebook didn't exist yet, or was in its infancy. So I was connecting with some people that way, including my work friends and all the people I knew. At this point, I was hanging out with people from work, you know, going to barbecues, you know, just hanging out in general on our days off. And still my normal set of friends at least multiple times a week, seeing them, you know, still seeing my family on holidays or going over and doing laundry at my parents' house at least once a week. So I could spend time with them, still going over there to do projects and stuff like that. Um, but then in 2010, I believe it was, when the stock market crashed, my job went to shit, meaning I had no money. I didn't lose my job entirely, but I lost the part of my job that actually kept me funded. So I went from roughly $1,000 a week to roughly $200 a week. Um, and that's kind of impossible to function on. I was able to pay my rent, but often I wasn't able to pay my car note. So I'd have to offset that by a month. And then it just kept going, kept snowballing. My parents picked up several credit card bills for me just to keep me afloat. And then eventually it came down to the point I could only afford my car note. It's like I had somewhere else to live, but I wouldn't have anything else to drive. So I needed to have a car. Um, so I had to give up my apartment. Now, it was when the lease ran out. I ended up actually having to move out a month before my lease ran out, and then they came at me for the remainder, even though they told me that due to circumstances I wouldn't be penalized. And then they penalized me anyway, so I still had to pay for that. Um, and given the fact that it was a ridiculous recession and nobody had money, that should have been something that was kind of forgiven. But you know, this is in the past at this point, so whatever. So at that point, I lost my independence. I no longer had a ton of money to spend. And at this particular point, my best friend that I was working with had lost his job, not because of this, but because of an accident at work where he was terminated and had a permanent injury. Now, I was still spending a lot of my free time with him and his wife. We were all friends, same group of friends. We'd get together as often as we could. But due to the fact that I was working and he wasn't, you know, we had less time to spend together. It was one thing when you see each other at work every day, you'd go out afterwards, stuff like that. And then he was spending all of his unemployment, or while he was still fighting to get his job back and getting, you know, very, very basic pay to survive, he was blowing it on stuff instead of putting it away, to the point that he was just going broke. And it was really hard to watch him do that, and he wouldn't listen to anyone at all, because he was also very depressed. He lost a job he was really good at. He had people fight for him to get his job back, but instead he was turned into an example and couldn't get his job back. And it was bad. So having to watch him fight. One of my other best friends was going through very bad relationship problems, to the point that he had to move out for his own safety because the girl was a psychopath and tried to stab him and all this, that, and the other. So at one point, we're kind of all in the same boat, all kind of screwed back to basically being our high school selves, but with, you know, big boy bills, kind of, for lack of a better term. But even then, you know, some things were stable. Eventually, things turned around at work. Went back to working. Um, so 2011 turned around, and I was making more money. And I moved in with another friend of mine. He's actually my friend's brother, but then of course we became friends. So I moved into a crappy trailer and ended up, my rent was me paying to renovate it. So I put it all on my credit card to renovate half of it, and that was essentially my rent. I helped with the bills, but I split the rent that way. So we remodeled half of it, literally, right down the middle, so that I would have somewhere to sleep and use the bathroom and things like that. Remodeled it very nice, actually, in comparison to what at that point was a 40-year-old single wide trailer. And I was there for about 5 years or so. And we made slow progress after that. We started making more progress around at the time that I was inevitably kicked out. But that's where I wanted to get to. So I had found this new relationship. It had to have been it had to have been earlier than that we got together. Because we were together for 3 years and we broke up in 2012. But I can't be right because we weren't together in 2009. I have to look at that. Something's weird about that. I'll figure it out. 2010, I guess, is when we got together. I don't know. Either way, the point stands. So I end up getting into a new relationship with a girl who hangs out with all of my friends, works with them and everything else like that. So we would get together for beer nights on the weekends. I was kind of doing my own thing, and then I would come in to hang out with them. So there was already some split happening. All these people still work together and were hanging out all the time. So even though I knew all of them and some of them were very long-term friends, I was always kind of on the outside. And then she and I start dating, and therefore I'm kind of back in with the group. Now all of us are doing stuff together. I'm getting involved in her relationship, and this is the one that I was talking about in the other videos. And things are on a pretty high note. I'm doing good with my money. I have a place that doesn't cost me too much to live. I'm buying stuff that I want. I have a fun hobby. I now have a real girlfriend, a real adult relationship for the first time after being an adult. Let's see, I was 26 when we got together. So that would be... I can't even do the math. 20... that still doesn't make sense. Either way. Where was I 26? No, I'm thinking. I don't know. Can't remember. I have to look it up. Either way. So... things are going good. I'm making good money. Relationship things. Possible plans for the future. And then 2012 happens. 2012. And I get, in the span of 1 year at work, in the same year, I get deathly ill, like really bad flu, to where I was out of work for over a week. I hurt my leg and my back in two separate injuries. The back injury I'm still dealing with. Leg injury just is what it is. It was just a bad week or so. I get shingles. Yeah, I got shingles at the age of 26. So we were definitely together when I was 26. So I may have been 25 when we first got together. Either way, it doesn't matter that much. But the point is, I get shingles. Young people aren't supposed to get shingles. But when your health and your immune system, your stress levels, your diet, all of that is tanked, it's fairly easy for shingles to crop up, even on a young person. So work is super physical constantly, all day long. Exposed to heat, cold, rain, filth, all of it. Not to mention just stress. And being that I've been injured, I've already been really sick, and now I have uh, basically an autoimmune disease to some degree. Um, my stress levels just through the roof. Not to mention, work was not taking it seriously. I had to take off a week to treat it to make sure it didn't explode and like basically take over a good chunk of my body, like happens to people. I caught it day one, and they started treating it day two. Um, so within a week or so, it was cleared up. But work was very pissed off at me for having to take off. They basically made me call in every single day, despite the fact the medication I was on recommended to not be in the heat or operate machinery. They eventually guilted me into coming to work that Friday, and it was terrible. It was one of the longest days I've ever had, not due to the work day, but the fact that my body was not ready for it. Could not acclimate to the heat. I was sweating profusely, all things related to the medication. And had I done it any earlier, it could have actually made the shingles way worse. So at this point now, I have massive resentment for my job, thinking that, look, they don't care if I live or die. They just want me to go out there and do the thing. They're complaining to me that I'm not working good enough because of what I'm dealing with. And that just started the downhill slope to where I actually ended up finding my way into the job I currently do, which is much less stress, but also much less money. That was my trade-off, because frankly, with the level of stress I was at, the way my body was reacting to it, I think had I kept going at the pace they were pushing, I probably wouldn't be here to talk to you. That is my legit feelings. That's not hyperbole. I think that as a person, as a living machine, so to speak, my body would have shut down, my soul would have been shut down, I really would have died. Like, I was already feeling very dead on the inside. At the same time, my girlfriend is dealing with massive depression on her own. She had lost about 7 friends who all either died in an accident or killed themselves. 7 of her childhood friends died in the span of a year. And along with losing her job, really kicked her into depression as well. So she was not equipped to help me with mine. So our 2 depressions basically intertwined to make a shit show of a relationship. And while we could have happy moments, most of the time it was just stress, just arguing, just having sex to get by and feel like there's something. And her poor daughter was in the middle of it. Now, I'm not going to say anybody was cruel to her. I was definitely not the best role model at all times, but I was also the only disciplinarian, the only person who had a stable relationship with their parents, and was raised by 2 parents that weren't terrible. My mother may have been kind of absent, but she was not a terrible parent. My dad may have always been there, but he wasn't always a great parent. So that's somehow balanced to make me an almost balanced person who at least grew up with some morals and knowing that raping your kids is wrong, which is something that her parents couldn't say. So when I tried to get involved as a parent, I was not allowed to, which left me more and more resentful. Not of the little girl, but of her mom. Like, look, I'm here to be your life partner. I'm here to help you raise this child, and you're not letting me. You just want me to be a babysitter, and that's not what I'm about. We've been together for years. I've been a part of her childhood, watching her grow up, helping her develop as a person, and you're not even going to let me be a parent because you don't think that I'm loving her the way you want me to. And so this just more and more resentment. We're fighting more and more until eventually she decided to go. Well, actually, she broke up with me, and then like 2 days later, we got back together after everybody cooled down. And then we went for a little bit longer, and then she went on vacation back to Ohio to visit her family, and she was only supposed to be there for like a week. She ended up staying 2 weeks. And like she wasn't calling me or anything like that. And so I would call her, send her text messages, stuff like that, check on her, see what was going on. When she said she was staying for a little bit longer, I'm like, okay, here we go. And so when she came back, basically broke up with me. And so, I had to reconcile that. Now, prior to this, part of the thing is that, and I mentioned this before, so all of our friends that we had together, including the ones that were my friends to begin with, that I'd known for like more than a decade, we were spending a lot of time with them, but then things really started to change. Different influences came in. So my best friend got a divorce, which sucked. Then he picked up a new girlfriend eventually who was filling all the void in his life with everything he wanted: alcohol, sex, anytime he wanted. And a young nubile girl who was willing to do anything he wanted to get out of the house from her parents, for her overbearing parents. And then it turns out he kind of became the overbearing one eventually. So with that, his life has totally changed. He started spiraling a little bit, really just doing whatever, like no shit's given about anything in life. And everyone else just wanted to kind of be part of the party because it's just all one group, except for certain people who had the life of their own, and despite knowing these people forever, had to isolate themselves. So it came down to a birthday party we all went to. It was a pool party. And it was fine during the day. And then it started to get darker. And then more alcohol was... We were drinking all day, but, not that big of a deal. More stuff started coming down. His girlfriend eventually showed up. She was at work. She came in, and as soon as she was told that there was no supervision, she basically got naked in front of everybody. Which, is fine if you're a young single gentleman and you want to see nice young naked girls. But when you're somebody who's already in a struggling relationship with someone who doesn't trust you for some reason, not that I ever cheated or anything like that. For some reason, she just thought that, if you look at another girl, that's cheating. And here is a young naked girl, or woman, should say, in front of us. And I'm like, okay, what the hell? And so all of the girls started taking at least off their tops. Most got naked. There's only a few, one of which being mine. Now, I was not happy with this because at this point we had already said, look, you're already mad at me for this. This is that, but in person. And you're okay with it because you're hanging out with your friends? And then basically even just a lapse of moral judgment. And I got very angry. Not only at the fact that my wishes weren't being respected by my own girlfriend, but that everyone else didn't care that it was just kind of anarchy, mayhem, whatever. It's like, it's fine if you want to do that. I'm not doing it. And then I found out one of my other friends was naked in the pool, but, with everyone else. It's like, dude, put your clothes back on. It's like, you're a single dude. You definitely don't need to be naked in the pool. At least the guys with a girlfriend, fine. But, at least they'll stay with their girlfriend. Nobody wants to see that, but it's kind of the way that it was going. It's like, somebody gets naked, stuff's gonna happen. This is not the kind of party I wanted to be a part of. Wasn't raised that way. If I was a single guy, sure, I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more, but being with somebody who is a parent and who's already worried about moral judgment of the people in charge of her daughter's life, who is now willing to participate in this just to have quote-unquote fun, and that was kind of the beginning of a downturn. So we said at that point, we're not going to do this. We can't continue with these people. They may have been our friends, but now their life is all about some other stuff that we're not really down for. So we kind of had to call it quits. And prior to this, I'd already been having fights with my best friend because he didn't respect my relationship at all. He would get drunk, he would run his mouth, and I almost kicked him out of my car on the freeway on the way home from the bar one night. I pulled over and nearly kicked him out right there on the side of the freeway because he was running his mouth. And it took more than a year for him to know that he said it. He was so drunk he didn't even know what he had done. He just knew that I was pissed at him. He remembered that he was pissed, or that I was pissed at him. And then at that point, after the pool party, we decided we're not going to hang out with these people anymore. So now we've isolated ourselves. So from a large group of friends down to us and a few other new people we knew. So we started making new connections, new friends, which is fine and dandy. I still know a lot of those people to this day. And our hobby and our life, everything was intertwined. But when she broke up with me, I lost all of that. The only thing I had was the hobby, which was craft beer. But now I lost half the places that we would hang out because she would hang out there. And my now ex-friends would hang out there. So she got to go back to them. She got to have all of the friends in the breakup. I got to be alone. So I had to establish these new friendships or start hanging out with the fringe people, which, like I said, I like the people. I'm still friends with most of them, or at least Facebook friends at very least. I haven't seen many of them in years, but I keep up with them. And so I've gone from kind of being on top of the world to now losing my relationship, losing my friendships, losing most of the places I could go to hang out because I knew people that at this point were on the outs with me were going to be there. So I'm having to start over, starting to find new places. Fortunately, that was there, and I found new friends within the hobby, also people I still know to this day. But I don't do that as much anymore. My life isn't about that, so I don't really spend any time with those people anymore. In fact, I got out of the hobby for the most part. Like, I still love craft beer. I'm still drink the stuff. I'll still go to events when I can. I've got several really good breweries nearby, but it's not my life anymore. It's just something that I enjoy doing when I have the time and money to do it. And that was one of the things that put a rift between me and some of these other people, is like their life is all about that. My life was no longer about that. So after I got out of it, for the most part, I was like, okay, now I really don't have hardly any friends. I don't have really anybody I can relate to. I'm super alone. All I have is work and a crappy place to live. So I tried to get into some video games. I was always into gaming, but I didn't want to dive into those. Those only filled so much time. And then I discovered Gunpla. I was already into Gundam, but I didn't know Gunpla was a thing. I finally discovered that via Gundam Build Fighters. Found that it was a real thing, and I started from there with several kits that are right here, coincidentally. And it helped me keep my mind busy. Because when my mind wasn't busy, I was thinking of all the terrible things. I was thinking of the friends I lost, the girlfriend that I lost, even to the point that we were still talking, but we were broken up. We were still hooking up, even though we were broke up, and she was seeing somebody new. In fact, the last time that we were together, she was already engaged to the new guy, which, mind you, only took 3 months after our breakup. So now I'm in emotional turmoil. I've lost virtually everything. And then at Thanksgiving, I believe it was, that year, I was already fighting with my roommate because he started to remodel in the middle of the night. Like, I woke up sweating because the power was off. He decided that he was going to start remodeling more of the house in the middle of the night. Never mentioned anything to me. I was literally about to talk to him about redoing the kitchen. That was our next step. I was going to devote my whole credit card, which my credit card line was much bigger by then. I could have literally paid to redo the entire kitchen so that we can keep moving on. But at this point, I guess he felt like I didn't give a shit about him, and I did, but he didn't care about me at this point. We had been fighting over little things. Parking, for one, because I had 2 cars that worked, and he had 1 car that worked and 2 that didn't. He had a car that just sat in the yard. He had another car that was broken down, and a car that he had bought to be able to get around. and I had two working vehicles, so I used mine. I parked where I could so that I could use my vehicles. And he got mad over the parking. I was like, dude, sell off one of these cars, something. You're complaining about money. You've got cars sitting here that you could just sell. You complain about the parking. Move one of the cars that's broken down to where you're parking, out of the way. Every excuse to have to do things his way. Sure, it's his place, whatever. But I'll tell you right now, one of those cars is still sitting in the rust pile that it was when he kicked me out. So after 5 years and a few arguments, despite the fact that I'd paid for so much of that place to be done, he said, look, man, I think it's time for you to go. So this is Thanksgiving, essentially. Maybe not even. It was before Christmas, but I know it was somewhere right in there. And I had gone to my parents' house. I came home, and then that's when he decided to talk to me about it, quote unquote. And he's like, he was going to give me till okay. It had to have been like either right before Thanksgiving, because I know he said, look, I know this is the busy time of year for you in work, so I'll give you until January to get out. And I'm like, fuck that. Literally waited for him to go to work the next day. Had my friend come over, packed up everything I had, grabbed my dad's truck, because we loaded down my truck and a U-Haul, and just got all my stuff out of there in one day. Went back a couple days later to get anything I missed, not to mention check my mail, and haven't talked to him since. Talked to his brother once, because I heard he was talking some shit about me. But then after that, it was just whatever. So within the span of less than 2 years, I've now lost all my friends, my place to live, and on top of that, I had started a side job that was like right up my alley. So like this is when I was still into beer, but not collecting it as much, just drinking it and having fun. I started a job at the brewery. I'd been going there for years. I had made friends. Now I'm there actually serving, getting to know people, being in the atmosphere of it. And then I was just nonchalantly fired for not a good reason by a person who said he considered me his best friend. A young guy who definitely had some issues. He was an alcoholic, an addict, slightly manic depressive. Actually, he was very manic depressive, and mildly bipolar, but that probably had to do with the manic depressiveness. So now I've lost a dream job, place that I love to work, or I'm sorry, dream job, my home, my friends, my relationship. So now I'm starting over completely at like the age of 32, I think. Trying to, I don't remember exactly how old am I now. Yeah, so maybe 31. I'm basically back at home with my parents. All my stuff is in storage. I have nowhere to go, and I'm alone. I spent most of my time sleeping. When I got home from work, I would come home from work, eat lunch, go to sleep for like 3-4 hours. Get up, maybe work on a model kit, and then eat dinner, watch some TV, play on what little internet I had. Mind you, I wasn't into YouTube yet, or on YouTube. I was watching it, and that was that. And then I tried to begin other relationships with people, including a married woman. That was a mistake. But when you're alone and someone shows you some affection, you go for it. And then also when you're in an abusive marriage and someone shows you good relationships and loving and caring, you also go for it. So that happened for a few months until she also eventually left me and stayed with her really shitty deadbeat husband. And that's objective. That's not super subjective, unless she was lying the whole time. If she was lying the whole time about the way he was treating her, then there's that. But there was a time where she told me she didn't want to see me because of the bruises that she got from a fight with him. And then when I did eventually see her, those were obvious. So there's that. And then it wasn't until I decided to finally give it one last go and got online on the Plenty of Fish that I decided to try to have a relationship. If I couldn't make one work, if I couldn't find anybody, I was just going to stay single for the rest of my life. Not going to date, not going to do anything, not going to devote more time to other people who have never really reciprocated what I've given. Um, so I met a couple girls. One was kind of local. We just talked. Never really went anywhere. She was more into it than I was. And then at the same time, I met Miss Shoky. Coincidentally, she was already named Miss Shoky. That made it real easy. Just kidding. Um, but once we started talking, we never stopped. So I knew that something different was happening here. Now, the important part of this discussion, and I don't know, I think I've said this on a live stream or in a Nerdcast before, that in that amount of time, so from the time that I lost basically everything, was essentially alone, I made the decision that if my life wasn't turned around in 2 years, like my birthday, 2 years from that time, that I was going to end it all. If I didn't have anything worth living for, if all I have is going to work, paying my bills, and no one or nothing substantial in my life, then I was just going to end it all. And just be okay with that. Because what's the point in living at that point? Like, there was no point to me being alive. I was literally just going through the motions every day. Like, the only reason to get out of bed was because I had to go to work. And then what happened when I got home from work? I went back to bed. And then occasionally spending time with the very few friends I had, I had some money, not much, barely enough to get by, pay bills, and move forward. So I was kind of at a dead end. There wasn't a good way to move forward until I met her. And then everything started falling into place. So at the time that I'd finally given up on trying, on making an effort to force my life to be the way I thought it should be, it all started coming together. And she was on the same kind of boat. Had been through a whole lot of bad relationships and a whole lot of starting life over. She was back at her mom's place. And so we found each other kind of out of necessity. And even though she lived an hour and a half away, every single time I drove up there, it was worth it. So then we moved in together. We've got this life together now. And I'm not going to lie, things are rough right now. There's a whole lot of stress. We've gone through some shit with where we live. You guys have followed the vlogs long enough. You've seen this. And yeah, we're kind of in a similar boat, that we don't have a whole lot of friends. And the few friends we do have, right now we can't see them much due to coronavirus. We see them occasionally. I do still talk to many people, but all of those people that were so important to my life before, I don't talk to. They don't reach out. There's Facebook comments every now and then, and I see other people moving on. The last time I interacted with some of those friends was at a funeral. Some of the places that I've done I've run into them in public. Just, what do we talk about? I've been out of your life for 6 years. I barely know what's going on, and that's only due to Facebook. A longtime friend got married. I wasn't even invited to the wedding. This is a guy I've known since junior high. Wasn't even invited to the wedding. And yeah, that hurt. That really did. Like, I found out, I knew that they were getting married because I followed his wife on Instagram, and I was seeing the wedding stuff, but I was waiting and hoping that there would be an invitation. There wasn't. And at the time, I could say that there was an issue with the mail, so if somebody tried to mail me a thing, it's possible it got lost. But that would be even worse, that somebody who had invited me to their wedding thought that I ignored them and didn't show up because I never got an invitation. That officially did happen. with my oldest best friend because he did invite me, my parents, and everybody to his wedding, but the guy at the time was basically throwing our mail in the ditch because he was just an asshole who didn't like his job. Um, so nobody in the neighborhood actually was actually invited to his wedding. So at this point, I'm kind of back in a depression cycle. Not that some of it ever really left. I've definitely found some happiness with Miss Shoky. My job is stable for the most part. Every now and then things get a little wonky. Every now and then I make more money than usual. I've started this YouTube gig, which for the longest time I was pretty happy at, and I've made friends. Some aren't around anymore. Some just the way things went, we're definitely not talking. Um, and I can see when I'm being an asshole. I really can, despite what people think. I'm self-reflective enough to think, wait, did I do something wrong? What did I do in this situation? And I'll overthink it to death. And I will usually talk to people about these things to like confirm, look, did I do this? Did I do this? Um, but as it stands, once again, basically virtually no friends. We have our few that are actual good friends. I'm closer now to one of my cousins than we've probably ever been. Um, but all of my old best friends are kind of far, literally far between. One is about 8.5 hours away. One's like an hour and a half away. Um, and just due to life, we don't really see each other. We talk when we can. New people that I considered friends, some have just completely disappeared to like because work changes. I don't see them anymore. They don't reach out. I see via Facebook every now and then stuff to see what's going on with their life, and it's just hard, And a lot of people really feel alone. A lot of people feel really depressed and alone, and I'm there. I spend most of my day alone by myself, mostly in this room or on the couch. If I'm not working, I'm probably in there on the couch. I should be working right now, but I needed to get this out. I've got kits over here that need to be reviewed, and I've got toys that need to be unboxed, and I have things to edit. But these things I just needed to get out of my head. And the not so funny thing is, I often dream of like my ex best friend and my ex girlfriend. Sometimes in the same dream, like we're back in the past and things are going down, or sometimes I dream about maybe we've reconciled, or for the first time ever, we're actually sitting down and talking. And I tried to reach out at one point um, to try to mend bridges and was kind of ignored. Like after the breakup, I did text him to tell him, look, we broke up, this, that, and the other. Like, I think that maybe we could try to mend some fences. And the irony being that once him and his girlfriend broke up, I actually became more friends with her because now she was on the outside, basically. I actually became better friends with his ex-wife up until there was a misunderstanding, and she just said, fuck you, and never talked to me again. Which that was a that was a coincidence tied in with bad information. That a conversation between myself and someone else, out of context, got back to her, so she made an assumption, and due to the situation, made this assumption and got really angry and just told me off. And I'm just like, if that's the way you want it, fine. It's not the truth, but if that's the way you want it, fine. Um, so, like I said, maybe I'm the asshole in some situations. A lot of times I'm not doing it on purpose. I can be an asshole. It is what it is. I have, an attitude, but I'm generally very kind to people. I'm truthful to a fault, usually. I'm going to tell you like it is. I'm not going to bullshit you if you mean something to me. So, now it comes down to being alone, feeling like I've missed out on so many people's lives, but if they cared, they would reach out. And the fact that they don't kind of solidifies that they don't care. It's that same thing. It's like, well, if you cared, you'd reach out. You don't reach out, so you don't care. So why would I reach back out? It's like, even if I gave it an attempt, if there's no reply, then I already got my answer. And that's the way it's been. And, that's one reason I do what I do. That's one reason I sit in front of a camera and rant to myself. You know, there's not a lot of people to talk to. And I did a video on this a couple years ago, literally addressing why I do this. And in that video, I did talk a lot about a lot of these things, but not in this much depth, I think. But I do miss a lot of those friends. I hate basically being a Facebook stalker to people that I grew up with, that people who were my family, or even my family. I have a massive family, and the only way I keep up with them at all is via Facebook. I don't interact with any of them, and with the way my parents are right now, it's kind of hard to spend time with them, not just because of the virus problem, but like just it's very socially difficult to spend time with them, with my dad's mental health and my mom's basic anger at everything, because life sucks right now, and she feels alone and abandoned too. It's just like there's only so much you can do at any given point with life, and it's tough. And maybe that's just the way it's going to be. We have the added stress of wanting kids, but not sure if we can even have kids. We're stuck in a not so great apartment that looks fun, looks like we have nice stuff, but it's a shithole. It really is, And I know that Miss Shoky really has a lot of depression going on. She expresses it to me fairly often. Every now and then we find a nice little outlet and she can be happy for a little while, but she also talks about being lonely. She doesn't really have any friends either. The few work friends that she's made, when they quit or get fired, they don't talk to her anymore, despite the relationship they had when she was there, or they were there. She has an old friend that she still goes and hangs out with, in her hometown. It's a long drive, but it's one of those things. Like, if you got to go a long distance to be with people that care about you and that you care about, then you got to do it. And I wish I could reestablish some of these relationships, but it's like 37. It's hard enough to make new friends, let alone reconcile with old ones that, for the longest time, probably thought you hated them because you just disappeared with no explanation. Which is also what happened in the fucking Gundam Club, where the asshole in charge booted me and a few other people out with no explanation publicly, so everybody just thinks that we left. So I become a pariah through no real fault of my own in a community I helped start. I become an outcast amongst friends that I was friends with forever due to my moral values. So yeah, maybe I am ultimately the fucking problem. I don't know. I try to be a good person. I try to give back. I felt like my life has basically been pointless, so I try to give back to people who still need some help in their life. That's why I do the charity thing. It's not amounting to much in the very literal sense of not much money being given to it, but I'm trying to use what little influence I have to try to make a tiny bit of difference while I'm still here. Trying to establish some type of community, but then people aren't even happy about that. Some people are massively critical or say really horrendous things, and to somebody who really does take a lot of stuff to heart, even if you think I don't, I do. So your comments do hurt. I'm not just a robot. I'm not a faceless computer. I'm a person on this side of the camera. So when you say really hurtful things, it means something. Half the time I'll blow it off, but some of the things really do hurt. You know? And with all of the shit going down in the world, people so divided by opinions and quote unquote facts and feelings, it's so hard to keep the peace anywhere. Like, I want to shut down my Facebook because I cannot take the fighting. I cannot take the stupidity. Today I brought it on myself because I could not keep silent anymore about some shit that was going down. I'm like, look, I cannot do this anymore. I cannot sit by and say nothing. And that's one reason, another reason I wanted to make this video. Not for political reasons, I'm not even going into that. But I'm tired of sitting back and saying nothing and keeping things internalized. Half the time when you have these feelings and thoughts inside and you have no way to express them, being able to sit down and tell anybody about them helps. Even though it's me talking to the few of you who will see this. And it's a daily struggle some days. And I spiral. There are days when I will be working, and because I kind of work alone essentially, if I let one little thing get to me, I will spiral. I've had to reach out to certain friends at times because I was spiraling again, feeling worthless, feeling like there's no point in me living anymore. And I mean, this is recent, within recent years, within recent months. So many people are dealing with just this stuff going down, feeling alone, feeling lost, feeling like no one cares. And half the time, that is my life. Alone and no one cares. I have my direct loved ones. I have some good friends that I've made while doing this. You know, people that, you know, I don't want to envision my life without because it's been made better because they're in it. And those are the kind of people you need in your life. Get rid of toxic people. Try to keep the peace with other people who have a different opinion than you. Assholes and belly buttons. Everyone's got one, and they all smell. But if there's somebody you haven't talked to in a while that you really considered a friend, maybe reach out. See how they're doing. If they don't talk to you or they tell you to fuck off, then it is what it is. If it does reignite a conversation, then good. If you can rebuild something, then good. Or build something new, for that matter. You know, I talk about building a community together. You know, my ultimate goal in life is to leave some kind of legacy. Something to be remembered by. And essentially, prior to doing this, I didn't feel like there was anyone or anything that was going to give a shit if I died. And if you get to the point that you feel there is literally no point to your existence, then please get help. If you're that depressed, please get help. Speak to a doctor, speak to a professional. Google depression hotlines, suicide hotlines, things like that. Like I said, I was done with my life. I had no reason to live. And every now and then, that feeling creeps back. It really does. This is not just me doing whatever. And I don't need pity. I don't need anything like that. Understanding is what I need more than anything. And that's what a lot of people need. Because some people are like, just get over it, things will be fine. No, you need to understand what people are going through. You need to listen. You need to hear what people are going through on a personal level. And once again, not doing anything, not mentioning anything political here. This is the literal sense that some people are going through so much right now, feel alone, feel abandoned by their friends, by their families, by the people that they hang out with. And some people are just locked in a house and haven't been able to go outside for 5 months. And they need a sense of community, and they're reaching out to the best of their ability. So try to be kind, try to be understanding, reach out to those that you care about. If people mean nothing to you, it's going to show. It really will. If someone means something to you, let them know. You know? So if by chance all those friends I mentioned see this, which is not likely, but, you know, I still think about them. Through other people, sometimes I find out what's going on in their lives. And, you know, in some cases, I'm happy that things have gotten better. Other things, I'm like, I wish I could have been a part of that. You know? But I don't know where to begin to rebuild something that was so broken. You know? It's like, I'm essentially the same person that I've always been. I'm really not that different. Points of view may have shifted ever so slightly as you get older. You gain more information, you make new decisions in your life, but for the most part, you're the same person you've always been. That's me. So yeah, like I said, you know, I miss a lot of people. I miss the connections I had with a lot of people. I miss having friends come over all the time. You know, the wife, you know, my friends were her friends, and now that we have almost no friends around, she feels even more lonely than I do. So, it's that. So, if you are feeling anything, reach out to people. Find people who care. Check for some hotlines, something, get some help. I didn't really have much in the way of help. I had to just live through it and then try to find a light. If I hadn't found a light, then I already knew where my end was. I didn't need counseling. I didn't need anything like that. Didn't need medications. Some people do. It is what it is. I know I talked about that with Joey before. He had the same kind of issues. Massive depression. Wanted to die. Eventually had the realization that he wanted to live, and started making changes in his life accordingly. I dropped my thing. That's why I keep looking at the ground. But I think I'm going to change my tone and start playing with some things that give me some joy. Like these fun little guys. I find joy in things. You know, maybe it's slightly empty, maybe it's not. They have value to me, especially the things that I helped build. And that's something that really can't be taken away. You know, there's a little piece of me in everything in this room. There's a little bit of my personality all over this room. And that's, when you have no one, sometimes that's what happens, you know. So this, in some ways, this is a monument to my loneliness, as silly as that sounds. But I think that's kind of, that to some degree, that's the ultimate fate of every YouTuber. It's like, this is the monument to my loneliness. Take it or leave it, or enjoy it for what it is. Because maybe at some point it will be literally a monument to when I felt alone, but I'm not anymore. Because I've built something new and better. But it's been a super long video, sorry about that. I just really needed to vent instead of doing actual work. And I'm waiting on my debit card, which is also very depressing that I've been waiting for like 4 days for my new debit card, and I need money. Because I can't buy anything. I'm dying for a Mountain Dew right now. So, I'll see you guys later. Remember, as always, it doesn't have to make sense. It just has to be loud. And that's kind of how you should live your life a little bit. Even if nobody else understands. Make sure they remember. In a good way. Not in a bad way. Don't, just whatever.